Imagine being one of the most powerful generals in the United States Army, commanding divisions, overseeing vast operations, holding the fate of thousands in your hands, yet still being denied access to one of the most important military secrets of all time. That's exactly what happened during World War II, when the United States embarked on a mission so secretive, so tightly controlled, that even senior officers were deliberately kept in the dark. The project was called the Manhattan Project, the race to build the atomic bomb. At its head stood General Leslie Groves, a man known for his iron will and ruthless efficiency. Groves carried the burden of one of the greatest secrets in history, and his task was clear: build the deadliest weapon the world had ever seen, and make sure no one, not spies, not enemies, not even his fellow generals, knew more than they absolutely needed to. Why was such extreme secrecy necessary? How did Groves manage to keep a project involving over 130,000 people hidden from even America's own top brass? And what was the price of this silence? Today, we'll uncover the story of the atomic secret, the story of power, paranoia, and the man who made sure America's greatest gamble stayed hidden until the very end. Make sure to subscribe, because this is a piece of history you won't want to miss. Let's begin. The Manhattan Project was unlike any military operation the world had ever seen. It was not a single base or a single laboratory. It was a vast network of secret facilities spread across the United States, hidden in plain sight, employing more than 130,000 people. Yet almost none of those workers truly understood what they were building, and that was by design. At the center of it all was General Leslie Groves. Before the Manhattan Project, Groves was already known as a tough, no-nonsense officer. He had overseen the construction of the Pentagon, the largest office building in the world at the time. He had a reputation for discipline, speed, and cost-cutting. But the atomic bomb was something else entirely. It required not just military oversight, but the strictest secrecy imaginable. From the very beginning, Groves understood the stakes. If word of the project leaked, it would not only alert the Germans or the Japanese, it could also trigger political scandals at home or cause panic among America's allies. Worse, spies could sabotage the work or steal the technology. Groves knew this weapon could change the entire course of the war. It had to remain hidden at all costs. To achieve this, Groves established a policy of compartmentalization. Each person was told only what they needed to know and nothing more. Scientists at Los Alamos might understand nuclear physics, but they had no idea how the uranium was being refined in Tennessee. Workers at Oak Ridge enriched uranium, but were told they were helping the war effort without explanation. Even the construction crews believed they were simply building standard factories. And here's the most shocking part: this secrecy extended all the way up the chain of command. Many high-ranking generals and admirals in the U.S. military were not informed about the bomb project. Some of them commanded divisions in Europe or fleets in the Pacific, yet they had no clue that America was building the most powerful weapon in history. Why? Because Groves did not trust them to keep silent. He believed that the fewer people who knew, the safer the project would be. Even General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe, was not briefed in detail until late in the war. Admirals who oversaw entire carrier groups were kept completely in the dark. Imagine being a general planning the D-Day invasion, while another branch of the military was secretly preparing a weapon that could obliterate entire cities. Groves controlled information like a prison warden controls inmates. Letters were censored, phone calls monitored, military police patrolled the secret sites. Every visitor was screened, and security clearances were given only after exhaustive background checks. Scientists such as Robert Oppenheimer, who became the project's scientific director, were themselves watched closely by the FBI due to their past political connections. But Groves didn't stop there. He demanded secrecy even among the scientists themselves. Some of the greatest minds of the century, Enrico Fermi, Niels Bohr, Richard Feynman, were forced to work in silos, exchanging only small fragments of information. Groves feared that too much collaboration might risk a leak. This created frustration among the scientists, who were used to open communication, but it kept the project hidden. The paranoia was not unfounded. Soviet spies were indeed trying to infiltrate the project, and they succeeded. Figures like Klaus Fuchs and Theodore Hall passed critical information to Moscow, accelerating the Soviet nuclear program. But Groves never admitted just how vulnerable the project truly was. For him, secrecy was both a weapon and a shield. Still, this secrecy came at a cost. Many generals felt betrayed when they learned about the atomic bomb after years of fighting the war without knowledge of its existence. Some believed they could have planned their campaigns differently if they had known such a weapon was being developed. Others questioned why America's own leaders were excluded from decisions that would reshape the future of warfare. Groves, however, did not care. He answered only to a tiny circle of men: President Franklin Roosevelt, Vice President Harry Truman after 1944, and a handful of civilian scientists and officials. To Groves, this was not just about winning the war, it was about controlling the future of military power. And the project was enormous. Oak Ridge, Tennessee became one of the largest cities in America almost overnight, built solely for uranium enrichment. Hanford, Washington, produced plutonium in vast reactors guarded like fortresses. Los Alamos, New Mexico, where the bomb itself was designed, turned into a desert fortress of science. Entire families lived inside barbed wire communities where they were cut off from the outside world. They couldn't even tell relatives where they lived or what they did. Housewives did laundry while their husbands split atoms, and neither side had the full picture. Groves even fought political battles behind the scenes. Many in Congress had no idea billions of dollars were being spent on the project. The money was hidden in the budgets of other military programs. To keep lawmakers quiet, Groves used vague terms like ordnance or construction materials. Only a few trusted senators and officials ever learned the truth. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, many generals thought the war was nearly over. But Groves knew his mission was not complete. The weapon had to be finished and tested. And so, under the desert sky of New Mexico, the Manhattan Project reached its climax. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was detonated at the Trinity test site. The explosion lit up the sky brighter than the sun, sending a shock wave across the desert and changing history forever. Only then, after the bomb had been proven, were many of America's top military leaders finally told the truth. Some were stunned, others were furious. But by then, it didn't matter. The decision had already been made. The bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, ending the war but opening the nuclear age. And General Leslie Groves, the man who had kept the secret from his own peers, became both respected and controversial. To some, he was the man who had delivered victory. To others, he was the man who had created a weapon of terror while silencing even his fellow generals. What makes Groves' story so unique is not just the bomb itself, but the scale of control he exercised. Never before had a single military officer held such power over information, deciding who was worthy of the truth and who was not. Even four-star generals, even admirals commanding thousands of men were treated as outsiders. And this secrecy shaped the future of the Cold War. By showing that even America's allies and its own officers could be denied access, Groves set a precedent for how nuclear weapons would be handled, with fear, with caution, and above all, with silence. The Manhattan Project was more than just science. It was a story of power, secrecy, and the burden of responsibility. And at the heart of it all was a single general who believed that trust was too dangerous, that knowledge itself had to be rationed, and that even America's military elite could not be trusted with the atomic secret. The Manhattan Project was more than a race against time. It was a race against human nature itself, against curiosity, against pride, against the temptation to share secrets that were simply too dangerous. And standing at the center of it all was General Leslie Groves, a man who trusted almost no one, who believed that the only way to protect the future was to hide it, even from his own brothers-in-arms. For many generals and admirals, the revelation of the atomic bomb was a shock that bordered on betrayal. These were men who had led armies into battle, who had seen comrades fall, who had lived with the burden of victory and defeat. And yet, the greatest weapon of all had been forged without their knowledge. It was a decision that rewrote not only the final chapter of World War II, but also the opening chapter of the Cold War. When the bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they ended the bloodiest conflict in human history. But they also cast a shadow over the future of mankind. The secrecy Groves enforced had succeeded. America had delivered the weapon first, yet it also created a world where even allies were viewed with suspicion, where silence became as powerful as the bomb itself. Groves remains a controversial figure to this day. Some call him the man who won the war, others call him the architect of fear. But one thing is certain, without his iron grip on secrecy, the Manhattan Project might never have succeeded. And the world we know today, shaped by nuclear power and nuclear terror, would look very, very different.